Breathing is one of the only things that, while it is controlled by the autonomic nervous system, we also have voluntary control. If we put our awareness on the breath, we can change it, we can alter it, we can control it.
Right.
So breathing is very unique in that. We can't really do that with our blood flow. We can't do that with what our body's doing naturally, but we can do that with the breath.
Right.
And just because you're breathing doesn't mean you're getting enough oxygen in.
Right.
Over-breathing is actually a very common thing where people take more breaths, but they're actually not getting in the oxygen. And what that does is when you're not breathing properly, it puts you in that stress, fight or flight, sympathetic nervous system state.
Right.
Your body's never going to heal. You're going to age prematurely. You're going to be anxious. You're going to be depressed, ADHD, all these things that we throw pills at. Breathing is the foundation which could actually help all of these things that so many people in our modern life deal with.
We believe that you are strong by design, and you were made in God's image to have a strong body, mind, and spirit. You're listening to the #1 strength and health authority podcast in the world. So let's get ready to unlock your potential and transform your life in today's episode.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode here on the Strong by Design podcast, sitting in the compound, just like our new spot for podcasting, oddly enough. We've been having fun out here because we have so much more space, and it's a little bit less congested, like in my office or Jared's office, right? But it's always nice to be able to podcast in person. We do so many of these episodes, of course, virtually, with guests from all over the country, from all over the world for that matter. But it's nice when we have a local guy like Coach Zach, who's in the Tampa area, who spends a lot of time here regularly coming for filming and stuff. And you're going to learn a lot more about Zach if you're not familiar with our guest today. He's a longtime friend of Critical Bench. We have done so many projects with him over the years, and he's brilliant at what he does, and he's really the perfect person to have here to talk through our topic today, which really applies to everybody listening. Everybody listening has to breathe, right? And everybody listening has to sleep. So this is really good. We're going to have a lot of fun chatting with Zach today. Before we get to introducing our very special guest, just want to say thank you so much for landing on the Strong by Design podcast. We are here in 2024 now. The show is coming in. We're kind of getting to the end of the 6th year of the show. It'll be the 7th year a little bit later this year, 7th season, I guess you would say. And the show is just continuing to build momentum and reach people well into 300 episodes. And we have the luxury of having so many hosts on the show, from me to Coach Tanya to Mike to Jared, and we can kind of go in all these different areas of living a life strong by design. So it's really such a blessing to have the show, and we thank you for joining us. If you're a new time listener, please hit that 5-star rating, leave us a review. If you're a long time listener and you haven't done that yet, we would love to hear from you. Now that you're more familiar with the show, maybe you have ideas for topics or guests that you'd like to see us have back. So please give us some ideas or suggestions. We'd love to listen to you and take your advice as a listener of the show. So our special guest, Mr. Zacharia Zenios, who has been in my life for a better part of 6+ years now. I was first introduced to you, I think, in 2017 from our boy Farnham, who was doing filming and editing for us, and you guys were childhood friends. And he said, I got this buddy of mine. He's really fit, and he's just out of the Marines, and I think he could make some really good videos for you guys. And we're like, bring him in. And we're here within a few months of that conversation, and then pretty much never left at that point, right? So welcome to the show, my brother.
Well, thank you for having me. Always a pleasure to be back on the podcast.
I know, dude. Well, this is the 3rd time for you on the show.
Yeah.
So when we first started, you were in our very first season. I don't know, like first 20 or so episodes, I feel like. And we talked about yoga, actually, I think, because it was that dynamic of you being, a former Marine, but also really into like yoga and understanding its importance for the body in terms. And this was kind of an interesting kind of dynamic, right? There's this like rough and tough Marine guy who also does yoga, but so that was a fun conversation if you want to go back and listen to that. And then not that too far back, what, about a year ago or so, we did an episode where we talked about the masculinity, but we also trying to think about
functional training.
It was more functional training at the start, and then we kind of bled into like going down the line of masculinity and how it's perceived in today's culture. So that was a two-parter. That was a long conversation. That was fun. But it's time to have Zach back on the show because of this area that he operates in professionally. We made a program with him that has been a long time coming. We've been talking back and forth about this topic for years now, right? And we started making some YouTube content and saw some traction. People were interested. And again, it's something that everybody has to do to function in life, to live, is we all need to breathe, and we don't need to know how to breathe. And we kind of take it for granted, right? It's like walking. We all know how to walk, but how well are we doing it? But we also need to sleep to be at our best, to be clear-headed, to be healthy, to get the best out of our performance, right? And so we kind of merge these two things together. And with your background, so I want to know more. I want our listeners to know more about your background in recent years. Why are you kind of like an expert in this? Whoa, they are doing some serious stuff outside today. So we live in like an industrial setting. Our office and warehouse is like a flex building with offices and our big warehouse space where we have our gym. And there's always like stuff going on outside. And we're near an airport with a Coast Guard area section to the airport, right? Yeah, so we get all kinds of noises here. So if you hear any noises, it's just people working hard. So again, back to the question about you and your background, your history.
Yeah, so right out of high school, I joined the Marines. Literally 2 days after graduating high school, I graduated with a bald head and went to boot camp 2 days later. Did my 4 years. I was lucky enough to kind of find what I wanted to do while I was in there. So I had about 6 months to a year left when I was deciding, do I stay in or get out? Decided to get out. And while I was still in, I got the NASM CPT, the Certified Personal Trainer book.
Me too, brother.
Yeah. So I got the book while I was still in because I was going to be a personal trainer while I was going to school for, at the time, it was sports medicine. Mm-hmm. So fast forward, I started training back in 2016, 2017 as I was going through school. Knocked out my master's degree in exercise and nutrition science. While I was doing that, I also went to the yoga teacher training, 200-hour. Knocked that out. There I learned all about yoga, the asana, so the actual movements and postures, but then all about the breath in terms of the yoga tradition. And after I finished school, right, meanwhile, I did all kinds of certifications, kettlebell coach through Strong First, WEC method, all kinds of different movement practices. I got really into Ido Portal and the mobility and other modalities that deal with mobility other than yoga. Mm-hmm. But after I finished school, I wanted additional abilities and skills to be able to help people. So then I went into neurosomatic therapy, which, for those of you not familiar with it, basically neuromuscular, but with the added implements of cranial work and visceral work. Therefore, it's called neurosomatic body, is soma, as opposed to neuromuscular. So I've been doing that for the past year, doing, really structural and focused body work. So not so much like massage therapy as you would think of, like going into a spa and relaxing, but actually getting to the root cause of people's pain. Because pain is like let's say you have shoulder pain. Yeah, I'll work the shoulder, but the whole body is connected in intricate ways, which we'll actually talk about here in a little bit. But so throughout all these different epochs of my life of learning and gathering information, connecting the dots, I've been able to assemble what's needed to come up with a really effective breathing program to help people sleep, because sleep is something we do every day, as you alluded to, and it's very, very important. it's sometimes overlooked. I think the awareness is starting to come now more how important sleep is, but most people just kind of use that as an afterthought. You know, we got that mantra, what is it? I'll sleep when I'm dead, or if you're not growing or making money, you know, you're dying. I think that people often overlook that importance. There's also like the hustle culture of like, yo, I sleep 4 hours of sleep, and they wear it like a badge of honor as if that's a good thing. So we really have to emphasize the importance of sleep and then maximize sleep, because while you're sleeping, you're breathing. And like you said, breathing is taken for granted for most people.
It really is.
We'll get into all that.
Shallow breathing going on in our world today, like stressed breathing, you know. I want to go back to something that you had mentioned, because we have a lot in common, obviously, just in our backgrounds and stuff, NASM certifications and schooling and kettlebell training and stuff. You had done Strong First. I did RKC, you know. And all the years that I was in training, understanding the need for breath work while working with weights, with, you know, free weights or machines or whatever type of training you were doing. But I didn't have a real appreciation and understanding until I did my kettlebell training to really understand the breath needed for that explosive movement. And it really was an eye-opener for me. And I'm sure it was for you too, because the breath is really harped upon during your kettlebell training.
You're not going to get through that snatch test without proper breathing.
Oh my gosh.
And especially with kettlebell, I loved, because it was Pavel Tatsulin. He did RKC, I believe, and then
that's where he started, and then he started Strong First. Yeah.
They really emphasize the power breath, which as you know, is the same thing as with martial arts, which like throughout NASM, they don't talk about breathing. They don't talk about breathing. A lot of fitness it's not emphasized. Like sometimes people will say, breathe in as you do the eccentric, breathe out as you do the concentric. That's about as far as it goes.
Correct. That was about the level of understanding I had with breath work while training, is that you don't hold your breath.
Yeah,
right? We all need air. And you exhale as you exert. I always put those two things together. However, there are instances where that doesn't apply, like in powerlifting with 1 RM or 2 RM or 3 RM. Is actually you want to stay tight and keep your breath in order to get out. And then the release would come right at the very end of the lift. I feel much stronger. I don't lift heavy weights like I once did, but if I'm still trying to hit 2.25 for like 5, 6, 8, 10 reps, something like that, I'll hold my breath for those first 3 to 5 reps just to stay really, really tight and rigid and keep my form. I'm just technically, I feel better. And then I'll let myself, I'll do some bring a breath in and then again hold it just to stay tight through my body.
That intra-abdominal pressure, which is why I love the power breath.
Yes.
Because it allows you to keep that pressure without.
Yes.
Because like if you're just, emphasize the inhale and the lowering the weight, exhale on the lifting the weight. What does that mean? Like there's a different way, but is it like a.
Right.
Like most people I see at the gym when they're doing it, and when you breathe out your mouth like that, you're just letting out all that intra-abdominal pressure. So like you can hold the breath, and then that's what, the Valsalva maneuver is. Or you can breathe out the teeth. So if you do that, just that one motion of breathing out through the teeth, you'll feel all the abdominals, all your deep core engage. And so, there's like the nuance of the breath. It's not so simple as inhale, exhale.
Right.
And there's a lot of nuance when it comes to breathing and sleep and exercise in your daily life. So.
Yeah, the power breath, man. I have old videos when I was first going through all this with kettlebell training and learning about the power breath, and that was fun. Moving on from power breath and that type of breathing and starting to learn more about the body and how the body works, how the body functions, and your love for, you taught us yoga for 3 years here, and in the midst of kind of school and stuff. And then we've continued obviously doing that here. You've continued doing that same practice for yourself. And that has seemed to really help kind of solidify all the things that you've come to know about the power of the breath, right? Because breathing and yoga are also, have a real strong relationship. That was an area where I, learning from you and then, of course, from Jen, realizing how it changes mood how it helps reduce stress, how it helps to clear a foggy mind. Maybe talk about that just a little bit before we kind of get into some of the more, kind of technical side of things. Because I just think if more people just did practice like yoga or just even simple meditation at their desk for 5 or 10 minutes a day, how much less stress they would feel, how much less on edge they would feel, how much more focused they would feel in life.
Well, breathing and walking are two things that are the most functional aspects of the human body, because those are the things you do every day. Those are the things you rely on to live and to move around.
Right.
So whenever we talk about, functionality of the body, breathing and walking should be the first places you go. In regards to breathing, there are many different ways to breathe. There are many different breathing patterns, many different ways that people get stuck in breathing. And we take it for granted because it's part of the autonomic nervous system. Right. If we don't think about breathing, guess what? You're still going to breathe. But it's also very unique because breathing is one of the only things that, while it is controlled by the autonomic nervous system, we also have voluntary control. If we put our awareness on the breath, we can change it, we can alter it, we can control it.
Right.
So breathing is very unique in that. We can't really do that with our blood flow. We can't do that with what our body's doing naturally, but we can do that with the breath.
Right.
And just because you're breathing doesn't mean you're getting enough oxygen in.
Right.
Over-breathing is actually a very common thing where people take more breaths, but they're actually not getting in the oxygen. And what that does is when you're not breathing properly, it puts you in that stress, fight or flight, sympathetic nervous system state.
Right.
Your body's never going to heal. You're going to age prematurely. You're going to be anxious. You're going to be depressed, ADHD, all these things that we throw pills at. Breathing is the foundation which could actually help all of these things that so many people in our modern life deal with.
Right.
And in terms of people saying, oh, I'll be talking about the breath, and I'm sure people's minds, even as we get deeper into the technical aspect, will be like, oh, why is breathing so complicated? It should be simple, blah, blah, blah. The thing is that our modern lifestyle and the way that we live our lives is so unnatural to the way that our bodies evolved to be that it's not complicated. Back in the day, or even these days, more Aboriginal or people who live closer to the natural life, they don't have to think about their breath. They just naturally breathe. They do all the right things. Tongue posture is a thing. They breathe with their diaphragm. Dysfunction is a rarity among people who live accordance to the natural way. And I'm not saying this to dog on our modern lifestyle. I love a lot of the comforts and a lot of the things that it affords us. But the reason why we're
creating our own modern time issues.
Exactly.
That people from centuries ago, they didn't exist, maybe, right? So we've created a whole new line of issues to contend with, right? Yeah, sorry to cut you off, but it's
true.
Where we've gotten so much better, with medicine and being able to live longer and healthier, and where an infection, it doesn't just kill you, right? You take a pill, you're better. Oh, okay, great. But
more chronic things these days.
More chronic things. Yeah. So, my feet hurt. Well, yeah, because you have awful shoes and you don't walk right? Or my sleep sucks because you're not breathing well, because you're not doing this or that. You're sitting at your desk 12 hours a day. So now you got a whole new, people didn't have probably lower back pain, right?
Yeah.
In the jungles or in the deserts or whatever, hundreds of years ago.
That was more of if people did have pain, or if people did have issues with breathing or anything, it was more of a traumatic injury or a birth defect.
Correct.
These days, you can have neither a traumatic injury or a birth defect, but the chronic ways of holding your body, the things we're breathing in, there's so many things that go into these chronic issues that people have. So when we talk about the technical aspect of the breath, people might be like, that's too complicated for me, blah, blah, I just keep on breathing the way. I don't have to think about breathing. Why would I think about it and add all this complexity? Right. The only reason why we are is because we have to understand the technical aspect to simplify the breath, because all these breath practices and principles, we want it to be downloaded in our nervous system so we don't have to think about it. But at first, it's like going against the grain. you have to think about it, especially with older people who have been breathing unconsciously and improperly for so long. You have to like keep coming back to it until eventually it's hardwired into you, and that's your natural state.
That's right. And breathing obviously has a direct, as we've said, correlation to sleep quality. And it's become like almost like a cool thing to like downplay the importance of sleep, right? I only need 4 hours. I take like a power nap and sleep like 3-4 hours a night. I'm good. It's like, no, you're not. I mean, science pretty much disproves that. Are there anomalies? Are there people who can function well? Maybe, right? There's influencers out there or high level entrepreneurs of some kind that will boast about their 4 or 5 hours nights of sleep, and they still seem to get by just fine. I don't know how they do it. I don't know.
A lot of caffeine.
You're right. I think there's other things going on besides just like I'm just that good.
Yeah, maybe some TRT.
Yeah, something like that. But I mean, most things indicate that a 7 to 9 hour sleep for an adult. Kids need more sleep. As you get older, you need a little bit less because your bodies aren't developing and growing and stuff in real time. But in terms of your brain and your body's ability to repair and to recover from being awake and alert for 12 to 15 hours, you need downtime. And this emphasis on breathing with this program really is designed to help that process, to help you fall asleep faster and actually have better quality of sleep. And so I just talk a little bit more, maybe now we can talk a little bit more about some of these, some of the breath work, that you've started to think about when you started to think about this program, that we kind of went back and forth with ideas about this. Like everyone needs to sleep. Like we all want to sleep better. Like everyone wants a better night's rest. Why are we all struggling when we finally do get to bed to fall asleep, or we have an awful night's sleep, or waking up and we're waking up in the morning feeling like we didn't get any sleep, like we're waking up tired, not good, right? And then if you're doing that regularly, if that's rinse, wash, repeat or whatever, that's not good. Mm-hmm. You are killing yourself, literally. So maybe start to talk on about some of those techniques that started to occur to you as like, oh, this could be helpful to implement something like this, or things that maybe you were doing yourself to get a good night's rest.
Just to touch on, like you said, the importance of sleep.
Yeah.
Obviously, we all know about the hormonal effects and the rejuvenation, growth hormone, all the things that naturally occur. Our body grows when we sleep. Yeah. Memories are consolidated, all that. We know that. Most people have an idea. But what's kind of newly discovered is what's known as the glymphatic system. We all know we have the lymph, right? The lymphatic system, which washes away all the toxins, impurities. It's basically like
buildup
the fluid.
Of crap in our bloodstream.
Yeah. So we know that lymphatic system, if it's not moving properly or if it's sluggish, we are more prone to diseases like cancers, tumors, all these things. But what's newly discovered is the glymphatic system, which is basically the lymphatic system for your brain. And that only happens when you sleep. So what happens is when you hit sleep and you go into deep sleep, particularly deep sleep, is the brain is washed in this lymphatic fluid, which will help wash the brain from all the byproducts of all the thoughts that you produce on a day-to-day basis, because thinking is a metabolic process, and all metabolic processes have byproducts to them. So the glymphatic system literally washes your brain in lymph so you can wake up refreshed and your brain is not accumulating these byproducts. Over time, even if you're getting your 8 hours of sleep, if you're in bed for 8 hours, but if your breathing is not proper, if you're not breathing in the most optimal way to support that sleeping process, you're going to be waking up throughout the night, or you just might not be hitting that deep sleep to allow that glymphatic system to work.
And that deep sleep is usually in those first few hours of sleep. When you first nod off, you can go to deep pretty quick. I remember, for years I wore a smartwatch and it was tracking my sleep quality. And I would notice, and I could tell in the morning, like if I felt really good, I'm like, sure enough, look, I almost had like 2 hours of deep. Like in that first 2-3 hours of sleep, I dropped right down in there. That's why my wife, and then it occurred to me, like when my wife, if I would fall asleep, I'm maybe on the sofa before going to the bed, or if we went to bed and she had to wake me up for something, she could not get me up. She'd be like, I could not wake you up. I was like dead, like you're just dead.
Yeah.
But that's the sleep that we want, right? That's kind of your number one. That's not the one you get the most of. You mostly get REM.
Mostly get. So I actually wear an Oura ring.
Yeah.
Light is definitely the one that you're kind of in and out of. But like you said, in the beginning of your sleep cycle, the beginning of however 7-8 hours, 6-5, that first initial part is mostly the deep sleep. And they have also found, I don't know how accurate this is, but it's a rough estimate that the time where you get the most deep sleep, the deepest sleep is actually between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. Now, obviously through our lifestyle, people who have night shifts, we can retrain that to some extent, although I don't think it's ever as optimal as that natural way of...
Our body responds to light.
Exactly. So we have our natural biorhythms, our circadian rhythms that are influenced by the world, by the earth, by all the things that go into the night-day cycle also influences our body because we're intrinsically connected to the earth. So that 10 to 2 rough estimate is when you get the most deep sleep. Later on in the day, you get REM sleep. REM sleep is also extremely important because that's where your brain kind of remodels its memories, and that's where we dream. And we still don't really fully understand dreams, but REM sleep is extremely important. Even light sleep to some degree. But we definitely want to maximize deep sleep because that's that glymphatic system. When the brain is washed, the body is harmonized and recovers. But the way you breathe affects your ability to be able to get in these stages of deep or REM. Because if you're not breathing properly, you might be sleeping, but it'll be light sleep, where the healing's not really occurring. And you'll wake up even after 8, 9, 10 hours of sleep, feeling lethargic, feeling tired, feeling mental fog. And that's because you might be sleeping, but your breathing is not optimal. And then you're not getting into those deeper sleeps because, like I said, breathing is directly correlated with your nervous system.
Right.
If you're not breathing properly during the day, you think you're going to breathe properly at night when you're completely unconscious?
Right.
You'll be in that sympathetic fight or flight while you're sleeping, which means you're not getting into the rest and digest, the deeper realms of sleep.
What's that last hour look like for you before your head hits the pillow? Take us through a typical night routine for you.
Yeah, so it depends. Sometimes I'll be working late, which it's not optimal, but for right now, you work hard when you're young. So sometimes I'll come home kind of late, and I really don't like eating dinner too late.
Right.
But then, I'm hungry, so then I'll eat. Those nights are always a little off, even according to my Oura ring and the way that I feel the next morning. Eating late throws me off and kind of throws it all off. Thankfully, that's not every day, just certain days. On an optimal day, first of all, I do not like bright lights. Once the sun goes down, I have a lot of amber colored lights or orange lights just to I like my house to be kind of like a cool, dark cave with some ambiance of light because, we could talk about blue light or red light, all those different spectrums of light and how they affect us. That's another rabbit hole we can go down. But so dim the lights, get everything nice and cool. Then I kind of simplified my morning and my nighttime routine over the years. I do what works and I kind of shed what doesn't because I want to keep it simple.
Yeah.
Sometimes if I had a really active day or I did something late at night that got my mind all active, I'll drink I make a ginger turmeric tea. I like having warm liquids at night. That's not an every night thing. Then I start to read. Sometimes I read. Sometimes I don't really typically watch anything, or I try to maybe less stimulation in some way. The most stimulation I'll do is read. I'll pray, I'll meditate, I'll get my mind ready to just go to bed. I do a lot of reflecting at night. That's the best time that I like to reflect on my day, on what the next day is going to look, but also the trajectory of my life. I like to do that at night, just kind of, the world is starting to shut down. I like to use that as a calm reflection. And then typically I go to bed. I keep it really simple. Over the years, I've done other things. I've had like a very rigorous meditation or this and that. I just like keeping it simple. The key is to make your environment dark and conductive of sleep, not staring at screens. If I'm reading something, it's usually not something too mentally engaging. And that's about it, you know?
No, that's good. How long would you say it takes from when you head hits the pillow, lights are off, until you're out?
Honestly, lately, because I wake up a lot earlier than I used to, and I go to bed earlier, probably within 15 to 30 minutes at the most. I'm out, and then I'm sleeping.
And I would say for most people that's probably about the same. I would say most people probably say that it takes about 15 minutes to 20 minutes for them to fall asleep.
Depends. A lot of people have problems with tossing and
It's
turning
true.
and active thoughts. Usually I lay in bed, but you're in that twilight state.
Yeah.
So even though I'm in that
True.
15 or 30 minutes of between,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm in that twilight, that alpha, you know, like different brain waves. There's beta, which we're in right now, and there's active. There's alpha, which is more that daydreaming twilight stage between awake and sleep. So like as soon as my head hits the pillow, I'm in that twilight state, just kind of like.
Yeah.
For some people though,
You have prepared the way. You've paved the way for calm, for relaxation, for, you know, a less stressed feeling.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us hold a lot of that in, and people's minds start spinning when their head hits the pillow.
Yeah.
Right? So they need something. What's something I can do? You know, what's something I can. For me, I mean, I can only speak for me, right? I've always been a good fall asleep kind of guy. I'm out in 5 minutes almost every night. As soon as I'm going to bed, I lay down, I'll say a prayer, I'll think about things I'm grateful for. I'm gone. I'm done. I'm out. It happens quick. And it's the same whether I just go to lay with my kids prior to my own bedtime. So I'll go in and lay with the kids between 8:30 and 9:30, depending on in that window when we finally get them to bed. I'll go lay with them, and I'm falling asleep with them, rubbing their backs, tickling their backs, or rubbing their head or whatever. I'm like falling asleep doing that.
So you're already in that twilight stage.
Right. I'm always ready. Like if it's like a switch, I guess, for me. Like if I know it, or if my body knows, like I'm horizontal in a bed, it's ready to sleep, man. It doesn't matter if it's 8 or 11 o'clock
That's a
at
blessing.
night.
And
Yeah, so I'm able to and I think this is like a side lesson to where our conversation's going today, but none of us can really affect our future at this stage of the day, at this point. The only thing that we can do that really, truly benefits us is to get a good night's rest. Not to stress and think about the next day and all the things that we got to get done, or the week ahead of us, whatever it is. And my wife, I think, is the other way around. I think she thinks about all these things and gets herself in not all the time, but I think a lot of people are like this. Whereas me, I'm like, I can't do nothing from here. I'm in my boxers in bed. I can't do nothing about tomorrow. The best thing I can do is just pass out, go to bed. And so I've had that mindset for many years, and it's served me well because I think it's always allowed me to just fall asleep right away, regardless of what tomorrow looks like. I know it sounds simple, right? But like you said, the simpler your routine is,
the more consistent
you can be. And I think just a quick prayer and being grateful for your life are two really good ways to get your mind right, and then lights out for me.
Going off of what you said too, and what we're talking about, how people's brains can't really shut off. And I actually talk about this in the handbook aspect of the program.
Yeah.
But I think for a lot of people, especially in our consumerist, materialist, go culture, is they don't have times in the day of calm reflection or silence.
Right.
So even when people are driving in their car throughout the day and they have long drives, typically they're listening to music or maybe even podcasts or audiobooks. And I love my audiobooks and podcasts, but there's times where you should just shut everything off.
Yes.
Right? People don't go through their days of having any bit of that silence or that quiet contemplation, which in the past, I mean, we didn't have devices. So it was always in that state of what we call now boredom.
Yep.
And I think that that's a big thing, because you fill your day with all these noises and distractions and work and even family time. That's one of the most important things, but you're engaged. You're not really contemplating about your life or anything. So we always are engaged in these things, which I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but you do need a little bits of time of quiet contemplation or stillness throughout your day, in whatever that means for you, to be able to process all these thoughts, to be able to, when you lay down in bed, you do not want that to be the first time of your day where everything is still and quiet. And that's the case for a lot of people. When they go and they finally lay down in bed, that's the first time your mind has a chance to digest all the things going on within it. And that's why you toss and turn, and you can't, oh my God, this happened today and this why didn't you do that throughout your day? Why don't you even have like a little bit of periods of, it doesn't have to be meditation, it doesn't have to be prayer, it doesn't have to be, driving in your car quiet. Maybe it's just you sitting in your room or sitting with nothing and just like staring at a wall and just letting for 5 minutes. I'm telling you, that alone will make a huge difference. Or you just drive to work with nothing, with no sounds, or you do the dishes without whatever it is. Because I know today people, and I see especially among young people when I was in college, I notice this all the time, kids walking around with headphones in their ears, always just inundated with sounds and stimulation. Your brain never has a chance to breathe until you lay down in bed. And then guess what? It's too late. You're going to be spending 30, 40, 50 minutes.
And now that stillness, you're just not accustomed to that.
Yeah. And so then you get anxiety, and then guess what? You're not going to sleep.
Too quiet.
Yeah.
I'm a fan person, though. We always have fans in my house.
Yeah, I mean, I do too.
I need that air. I need some sound from that. But no,
that's
love
not stimulating sound, though.
No, it's just soothing, kind of
it's hypnotic.
Perpetual. Yeah. Like ocean, the surf coming, or a wind through the trees type stuff. That's why I love my family, and I love vacationing and being outside, because besides our own voices in the woods or wherever we are, it's birds. It's wind through the trees. It's distant sounds of whatever of nature.
Yeah.
And water running, like a river or fall. If what's great is when you hear something and then you go to explore it. Yeah. Because you heard it from like far away and you don't know what it is.
And that right there. So I love music and I love, instruments and all that. But what you just explained there, the trees, the sound, the birds, like a way to think of that, and like that will maybe be a shift, is like, that's the music of God.
That's
right.
Right.
That's the natural music. And if you just have that like simple adjustment in your brain, like that can be your music. And then you don't have a need to fill your ears with, music. And another thing about, this is a side tangent, another thing about music, especially modern music, is like music and instruments and tones put us in a hypnotic state. And then the words that are said affect us on a very deep subconscious level, whether we're aware of it or not. What is a lot of modern music talking about? I'm not going to go into details, but mostly things that are probably putting you down in your lower self.
Sure.
Right? Making you focus on the wrong things. And guess what? You might love the music, you might love the tones, you might love the beats. They're affecting you on a subconscious level, and they're going to cause you to think differently as you go about your day. Right. So in my estimation, typically for a lot of people, less music, less distraction, less noise will not only support you as you're thinking and as you're going through your life, but it will support you when you go to bed.
Right, no doubt. Yeah. What does proper breathing look like? Like the mechanic, like simplify, and obviously people are listening to this, but I think you can kind of talk them through it. Like, what does poor breathing look like versus good breathing or proper breathing? Just sitting at your desk, or sitting in your car driving, or standing at the sink washing dishes. What's that look like?
So let's take the nose and the face and all the tongue, all that out of the equation for now.
Okay.
Let's just speak about what's going on in the torso for the most part. So when you breathe in and when you breathe out, there are muscles that are allowing that to happen. The main muscle and the most important muscle that should be always active when you're breathing is your diaphragm. And that is the first place that people should go when they want to improve their breathing. Because the diaphragm is that dome-shaped muscle that sits inside your ribs and it kind of separates your chest from your abdomen. When you breathe in, the diaphragm is supposed to contract, which means it flattens out. The term belly breathing just means that diaphragm pushing down, which causes your internal organs to push out. Now, a side tangent on that, a lot of times people who are focusing on belly breathing, that's not proper breathing mechanics either. They're just pushing out their organs, and you're not actually using your diaphragm correctly. That's a little more detailed, so let's just talk in more from simple terms. So a lot of times people's diaphragms are not functioning properly. And one of the main causes, and we've talked about this on the channel, I think we even have a program, Unlock Your Hip Flexors. Yeah. The psoas, the deepest hip flexor, which picks your leg up, the psoas and the diaphragm are pretty much basically the same muscle. If you follow the psoas as it comes down from your femur, your leg,
top of the femur,
through the pelvis and up into your spine, it has fibers and fascia that connect directly to the diaphragm. They actually, in a cadaver, they tugged on the psoas down at the leg, and the diaphragm was moving.
Wow.
So the diaphragm and the psoas, so if the psoas are tight, or weak or dysfunctional.
Which is most of us.
Which is most people. You know, we could tight hip flexors, dysfunctional hip flexors. You're sitting all day. Your diaphragm is going to be tight, which means it's not going to be allowed to work properly. The body's smart. Breathing is extremely important. So if your diaphragm is working improperly, then it will use other muscles to breathe. In this case, pretty much any muscle that's attached to your rib cage can help in that. But primarily your scalene muscle, your neck muscles come down and attach to the first rib. So if you're not breathing properly with your diaphragm, your neck will pull your rib cage up to create space. Another is the intercostals, the muscles that run inside and between the ribs. Those muscles will pull the ribs apart so they can expand. The QL, quadratus lumborum, attaches at the 12th rib. That will really engage and work hard to help you breathe. So accessory muscles will cause you to breathe. And most people who are shallow breathers, all people who are shallow breathers, you're not using your diaphragm. So the first step would be to connect with your diaphragm. You have the left and the right side of your diaphragm. Both sides work independently. So your left diaphragm, which is actually, I won't say the more important one, but it kind of is, because the left diaphragm works more, because your right diaphragm is where your liver sits. So there's a little bit less of a pumping action of the breath with the right. The left is a little more important. I'm not saying that the right is not, but the diaphragm as a whole needs to work properly. For a lot of people, especially in the yoga world, or people just getting introduced to breath work, we hear that term belly breathing all the time. What that means is you breathe in, the belly comes out, no movement in the chest, you breathe out and the belly goes in. This is improper. And a lot of times people think it's proper. It's not. Because all you're doing is, yes, you're engaging the diaphragm and you're pushing the belly out, but all you're doing is dumping into the organs and they're pushing out. The body's meant to work together as a symphony. So while you're just sitting at your desk or while you're just chilling and you're in rest to digest, maybe that's all that happens. The diaphragm expands and the belly pushes out a little bit and then you breathe out. But that's shallow breathing. In yoga, this is called the Dirga breath, the 3-part breath. So the initial movement of the breath is the diaphragm pushing the organs out, but it doesn't stop there. The ribs are also moving dynamically and are supposed to help breathe, because your ribs are supposed to expand not just in the front, not just in the back, but in all directions, 360 degrees as you breathe. The ribs are supposed to move when it's working properly. So while the initial part of the breath is the belly moving out with the diaphragm contracting, the ribs are supposed to gently expand to the sides and to the back. And then the final part of the breath, not the shoulders coming up, but the sternum is supposed to lift gently, because your lungs are big. So it's not just breathing into the lower lobes. It's not just breathing into the upper lobes as shallow breathers do, but we're working together completely, 3-part breath. So that's what Dirga breath, that's what proper breathing is the belly, the ribs, and the chest working in synchronicity so you're breathing properly. And that changes as you need to breathe more intensely or as you're more calm. So as you're exercising, there's going to be more movement in the belly, the ribs, and the chest. As you're calm and relaxing, probably less. And the key to return to what proper breathing mechanics looks like, breathing is supposed to have an ease to it. You're not supposed to be forcing the breath. Obviously, exercise is a different story, but as you're going about your day, it's not like you shouldn't rarely hear your breath when you're just chilling, when you're just calm. Like your breath should be quiet. Breath should be quiet to your neighbors, maybe even quiet to you, but it should be effortless. You want to get to that state because if you're just always focusing on the breath, if you have to focus on the breath, then when you go to sleep, your awareness is going to be gone and you're going to slip right back into those unconscious breathing patterns. So it's about developing an ease and softening the breath. We go into that in the program as well, softening the edges of the breath, softening the inhales, the exhales, quieting the breath to bring that ease of breath. And then, so that's like the torso aspect. And then the other aspect is the nasal and the tongue. And, those are different mechanics of the breath.
You go into great detail. Obviously, with the program, no doubt by now you realize that, Zach, we went to Zach as the expert in this arena, as I indicated at the start, because of his schooling and all of his education and experience and yoga and his neurosomatic schooling that he's had more recently. He's really just the perfect guy to kind of take all these worlds and just bring them together in a very simplistic, that's what's made Critical Bench unique in a way, aside from all these other fitness and health companies and businesses that have been around the last few decades, is we like to simplify and turn everything into like a beginner level experience for people. People don't commit long-term to complicated and complex. They can for the short term, they can for a few weeks, 30 days, 60 days, maybe 90. But the average person throws in the towel because stuff is it's just too much to stick to or to do. And so what we always thought was like, if I was to do this, what would get me going, right, with this and staying with it? It's got to be simple. It's got to be quick. It's got to be 1, 2, 3, ABC, and that's always been our approach. So even with all your schooling and all your knowledge and know-how, you're still able to kind of condense that into something that's very easy, if you will, for people. And I think that's what's so vitally important to this program is like, it's all about easy. So we understand now the breathing component to sleep and how married these two things are. I mean, they really are, right? Both things are done subconsciously or unconsciously. We breathe without thinking about it. We sleep without thinking about it, right? And that's why our bodies are just absolutely so amazing. But training ourselves to do these things better while we are awake will lead to a better experience while we're sleeping. And having a more restful, I don't know anybody in the world that doesn't want to feel more rested when they wake up in the morning, whether it was a 6-hour night of sleep or an 8-hour night of sleep or whatever. So what does this look like for somebody on the other side who is struggling to get quality sleep, doesn't want to take over-the-counter prescription medications necessarily? Obviously, that's their choice. That's between them and their doctors and all that stuff. But there are natural ways to improve our lifestyle, right? There are natural. We don't always have the knee-jerk response. Go get a drug. Go get a medication. Take melatonin. Do that. Do this. Do that. It's like, no, there are other solutions out there. You just got to give them a go and see. So, what does this look like what did you put together for people here? I want to know a little bit more about it for our listeners.
Well, the first thing is the knowledge. So we go into detail about the proper breathing mechanics, nasal breathing, tongue posture. That might sound complicated, but you just need to know it. Right. That way, as you go about your day, you can bring your awareness more. Am I breathing through my nose? Where's my tongue resting in my mouth? What part of my body is expanding when I breathe? Because you really have to tune into the awareness of throughout your day, because the way you breathe during the day is the way you're going to breathe in sleep, but probably even worse if you're not aware of it.
Right.
And the second thing is the routine. So we put together a 10-minute routine. It's really like, it's I would say it's simple, but it does have some detail to it. So we come up with a video that explains what you'll be doing in the routine. So then when you can do the routine, you don't have to think about it. But it's just a 10-minute routine that you would do before you go to bed every night that will tap into your breathing to affect your nervous system, to quiet everything down. And if you do that right before bed, then you're more likely to do that as you sleep, because you're setting the tone for your breathing for when you sleep and you're not aware of it. But the key is the awareness throughout the day, because it doesn't matter. You could do a 10-minute routine, you could do a 20, you could do a 30-minute routine before you go to bed. But if you just breathe unconsciously through the rest of the day, when you go to sleep, those 20, 30 minutes of intentional breathing and practice will fade away, because you're going to follow the path of least resistance, and you spend way more time awake, unconscious of your breathing, than that 10-minute, 30-minute routine that you did before bed.
Right.
So it's definitely the awareness and tapping in throughout your day and kind of coming back to the consciousness of how you're breathing throughout your day.
Right. Talk about the tongue posture trick real quick, because
Yeah.
it's a very simplistic thing, and we say the word trick because it's like a gimmick, right? It's like, but it's a simplistic way of getting results, to see results. That's why we call it like a trick. So what is the trick? So just so that people, you can even show them, because if they're watching on video, they'll be able to see what you're doing.
The tongue trick is really just tongue posture.
Right.
And when we think of posture, we think of like stand up tall and all that. But everything has a posture. Posture just means the way that it's being held in space.
Right.
And the tongue is an extremely powerful muscle that is really overlooked in all aspects of fitness, of health. People, doctors, they just don't take into account the tongue and its importance. And we see this and actually, I would say that it's now becoming a little more popular, tongue posture, simply because of the vanity reasons.
Right.
Because people are realizing when you do have proper tongue posture, it changes the structure of your face and your jaw to make you appear more good looking. And so that's why it's getting more popularity. But, and that's not a bad thing, right? But it also has a huge impact on your breathing. So proper tongue posture is, and I've actually made videos in this in the past, and we talk about this in the program, but basically you have the roof of your mouth and your tongue is supposed to be sitting behind your front teeth. So the tip of your tongue behind the front teeth, the top front teeth, and then the rest of your tongue is suctioned at the top of the roof of your mouth, the palate of your mouth. Now that does so many things. The most important thing is it opens your airways. So like if you're sitting at home right now, you're watching, you're in your car, whatever you're doing, just let your tongue rest at the bottom of your mouth and try to breathe. Breathe through your nose, breathe through your mouth, and you'll notice your airway, how it feels.
Yeah, it feels a little bit
constricted.
Yeah.
Now do the proper tongue posture of the tip at right behind the front teeth, and the rest of the tongue suctioned. Then take a breath, and you notice that immediately, unless you have inflammation in your sinuses
or you're congested,
you'll notice that your airways are immediately more open, because the tongue resting at the roof will open your airways as well as activate certain neck muscles that will support your neck in space. So just a tangent, whenever you're doing core exercises where you're going into extension and flexion, such as, common people crunches or sit-ups or anything where you're on your back, or even in planks where to have proper tongue posture, so you're using the whole of your neck to support your head as opposed to just certain muscles. Paul Chek goes into this about how it's important to have proper tongue posture when you're doing core exercises. That's just a different topic. But having the tongue posture at the roof of the mouth, it will actually support your maxilla, because the way that the skull, the cranium is structured it's actually not fully formed. It's not fully connected, right? You have sutures, little connection points of the skull that are not fully fused.
Especially when we're babies.
Well,
right?
especially when we're babies.
Basically
it's
separate
just cartilage,
bones, right?
really, but it hardens into bone.
Right.
But the actual bones don't fuse until you're in your 70s.
Right.
Typically. So like literally, it doesn't matter. You can be an adult and still affect changes to the bones because of the nature of the skull and the facial structures. So having proper tongue posture, because if you think about your mouth, it's an open cavity, right? And there's a lot of things that sit on top of the roof of your mouth. So over time, without the proper tongue posture, gravity will pull it down. The facial structure will begin to go back and droop down. And we've actually seen this, and there's a whole realm of dentistry. We've heard of orthopedics, orthodontics, where you wear braces to straighten out the teeth. But there's another realm of it, orthotropics, which is actually focusing on getting the structures of the face in proper alignment to naturally kind of bring more alignment to the teeth and the face in whole. And you can see this picture. Look up Dr. Mew, because Dr. Mew is like the leading orthotropic doctor, and
how do you spell that?
Mew, MEW.
Okay.
That's where the term mewing comes in. People in the acting world, I'm sure, people really concerned about the facial structure and jawline, all that, have probably heard of mewing. Mewing is literally just a word for proper tongue posture, dedicated to the doctor who made this popular, Dr. Mew. There's two doctors, both of them are Dr. Mew. But so it's about supporting the facial structures and opening the airways. And the thing I was going to go into was, did they actually talk about it? There was a 10-year-old boy, so a picture of a 10-year-old boy with really great facial structure. You can see his jawline. It's just like he's got good facial structure. And then as he got older, pictures started showing like the jaw drooping, the face becoming flatter, and eventually like the nose even developing a little bit of a hook. And when they discovered why, it was because when he was roughly 10 years old, he got a pet gerbil. And he had a pet gerbil throughout his teenage years, and he always had a pet in his room that he was allergic to. So he wasn't able to breathe through his nose. And when you can't breathe through your nose, that causes you to mouth breathe. And when you mouth breathe, you're not going to have proper tongue posture. So because of that, and because it was during his formative years, and then later he always just had a gerbil or a hamster or something he was allergic to. The facial structure literally began to change. Everything began to droop because he became a mouth breather, which means proper tongue posture was not a thing anymore. So in terms of breathing, tongue posture opens the airways and allows you to have more space in your face to actually breathe. But also, from a more traditional Chinese medicine approach, which is focused more on the proper energy channels and keeping the flow of energy in the body of qi flowing, which is an alternative aspect to health than our Western allopathic ways of looking at the body. But as we learn more and more, they actually start to align even more. There's what's known as the microcosmic orbit, which is the energy channel that goes up basically along your spine and all the way up the back center. And then it comes down through the front and comes down the front. But the tongue is the switch which connects them. So when the tongue is at the roof of the mouth, it allows that qi, that energy to come down the back channel and down the front. If you're a very scientific person and you hear that and you start to let your eyes gloss over, I ask you to not make science your religion and to have an open mind, because that's the true scientific method, is to always keep things open, because as we learn more and more, we might actually realize in our scientific way of understanding the body that is actually true.
Well,
so
people were not dummy. We don't give ancient medicine or ancient wisdom enough credit these days. We think we know better, right?
Yeah.
Because we're so well educated and so well informed. There's some pretty smart cats thousands of years ago with the things that they were doing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, where do people think medicine comes from? It comes from nature.
Yeah.
Right? And people found in nature certain things that could be used in a certain way and have desirable effect, right? And we've just obviously fast forwarded that quite a bit into the Western medicine. But even in these other holistic approaches, right?
Well, they've been talking about this tongue posture for centuries.
Right.
They've literally been, when you practice Qigong, Tai Chi, even to some degree yoga, more so on the traditional Chinese medicine avenue though, they talk about putting the tongue at the roof of your mouth to close the microcosmic orbit. Whereas for however long in our idea of Western medicine, that's been overlooked until it really started with Weston A. Price, who started really like discovering why people in the modern world had the worst teeth and crooked teeth. And then the Aborigines and the natives who lived closer to the world had straight teeth. I mean, that had more to do with the diets and things.
Sure, right. Lack of cavities from sugars and processed foods.
Also, like chewing hard foods.
That's right.
Especially at a young age, chewing hard foods. They wore down their teeth more, but they were straighter and healthier. But then goes into like Dr. Mew, who talked more about like specific tongue posture. So like we're just catching up with some of these things that they've known for thousands of years.
Right.
So
getting to that mouth breathing while we sleep, what does that create? For most of us, it creates snoring. And snoring is a massive sleep disruptor, which you touch on quite a bit in the program. In fact, there's an extra component inside the program called the Anti-Snoring Protocol, which I would highly advise people to look into if that's something you're struggling with. But why do people snore, right? And anyone listening who has a spouse, chances are one of them is a snorer. I mean, we get people going in different bedrooms because of this. They don't like to sleep in the same bed because one's a snorer, one's not, and they're waking the other one and having disruptive sleep. Or they're both snoring and sawing wood together in bed, which is, unfortunate. Funny, but unfortunate.
Yeah.
I've probably snored a little bit in my life. I think we're all capable of it, right? Especially if we're congested or, anything like that where we're having to breathe through our mouth. But my children and my wife and stuff that don't really say that I'm a snorer. I don't believe that I am, but I know a lot of people listening are. So what are some quick takeaways that you can provide for our snoring community?
So as we already touched on with tongue posture, if you don't have proper tongue posture, the structures of your face will begin to droop and collapse down due to gravity and the muscle of the tongue not being able to support that. Some other things happen where like the other muscles in the mouth and the throat begin to lose toneness, lose their ability to stay tone, which will allow them to kind of collapse and droop even more. What all of this contributes is a narrowing of the airway. And so when your airway is narrowed because everything is collapsing, what will happen is the breath comes in and there's friction, right? It's hitting all these structures as it goes in, and that's what that is. That is the air hitting all these structures as it comes into the lungs. Snoring means you're immediately a shallow breather, you're a mouth breather, which means you're not getting any of the benefits that come from nasal breathing, which there's, like, you do not breathe. If you're a mouth breather, you really need to work on being able to breathe through your nose. I have many videos on that. We touched that up in the program as well. So that is what snoring is. Basically, the structures and the muscles of the mouth and the throat collapsing, causing the air to have friction and turbulence as it comes in. And there's actually a surgery. People actually have this surgery where they go into the throat and there's a nerve called the hypoglossal nerve, which innervates your tongue. And so they'll put this electrical stimulation thing. So it picks up whenever you snore. And when you snore, it will go off, giving it a little electrical pulse to that nerve, which will activate your tongue to assume natural tongue posture. So there's literally a medical procedure that people have where they implant an electrical thing in your throat to do something which you can train yourself to naturally do over time.
Right.
Obviously, it's not as easy. It's not, it's not going to be immediately fixed. It's going to take a lot of hard work and discipline and intentional checking in with your breath throughout the day. But it's a lot better than getting an electrical device implanted in your throat. At least that's what my opinion on that.
Yeah, I'd rather not go that route if I could. Our bodies are designed in such a way where they're designed to work optimally without us having to alter them or add metal to our bodies or all kinds of stuff that exists out there, which I know helps people and benefits people, with modern science and modern medicine, but our body, if we can find these natural alternatives to heal our body to work optimally, I feel like that should always be the first approach, and try, at least give it a go.
There's not as much money in it, though.
Yeah, and it's not nearly as much money. So these, obviously there's, as you hinted at earlier, there's a routine that you've created that's very much like kind of like a sleep-guided meditation, if you will, that type of thing, which is putting you, it's people will fall asleep just listening to this, just listening to your words, and it's very soothing and all that, but it's really just it's a flow that you've established of how to go through these different breathing rhythms, these different breathing methods to really get their minds right and to set themselves up for proper breathing as they sleep. And there's I think there's some different sounds that we've put with it as well, just to give people like different options for, whether they like this nature sound or this nature sound, but it's your voice kind of talking to them into this. But as you said at the start, there's a coaching video that shows them how to do these so that they are feeling well-versed in this because you don't want to be thinking about, am I doing this right? You want to have already practiced this and gotten it down so that when you hit that 10-minute flow or whatever while they're laying in bed trying to really get ready for bed, that they're just going through the motions of it at this point. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that, I think that'll be really beneficial to people. We had fun where we were able to go and film it. I thought that was we did something that we haven't done in recent memory, where the team, we all went to a home somewhere and shot this in a beautiful setting, beautiful location over a few-day period. And I think it really turned out beautifully. It was a great setting. The information is just super valuable. I think you were able to really go deep on all of this. You really put a lot of time and effort into kind of considering all the things that were worth talking about and helping people, whether it was from the handbook that dives deeper into things. So we have a several chapter book. If people are readers and they want to learn more, they can really dive deep in the handbook, or they can just watch these simple follow-along videos where you kind of just teach them how to do these breathing methods for better sleep. Any other final thoughts or takeaways that you have for the program? Anything come to mind that maybe we didn't hit on?
Well, definitely, I would say for the snorers out there, when you get the program, because I believe that, everybody will benefit, especially people who don't sleep well or don't know proper breathing mechanics. But for the snorers out there, definitely opt for the Anti-Snoring Protocol.
Yeah.
Because we were just talking about snoring. A lot of the good doctors out there that deal with snoring and treat snoring will give you exercises to strengthen your tongue, to strengthen the structures of your mouth, to strengthen your throat, to be able to tone these muscles up to create more space in your airways so you're less likely to snore. I include a lot of those exercises in the program itself, along with all the information that I just talked about, but more. So we go deeper into, the actual structures that that lose their tonus and create the snoring. We go into how that causes you to wake up and why sleep apnea is the end cause of snoring. So if you're snoring now, know that can easily evolve into sleep apnea, which is where you wake up in the middle of the night because you can't breathe, and then you're like, and then you go back to sleep. That's literally your airway getting so constricted that you can't breathe. So not only are you snoring past all that, but then it gets to the point where there's not even room for air to get in, which is what sleep apnea is. And then you have to be hooked up to CPAP, all these contraptions like the CPAP machine and surgeries.
And it becomes a lifelong practice. I mean, my own brother, I know, has a sleep device that he sleeps. He went to a sleep center and got tested and was waking up. I forget how many. It's amazing. Hundreds of times in one night.
Yeah.
And there are people listening for sure who are suffering and dealing with this, or they know somebody who is, a spouse, a loved one, a sibling, somebody, significant other. But it's so prevalent. And all we want for you as a fitness and health company, right? So Strong by Design is our podcast, but we are Critical Bench. We are a fitness and health company. We create simple solutions for people struggling in all these different areas of fitness and health. And breathing certainly is a huge component of our life, and sleep being the other. And the two things do come together. And we're like, and this just made so much sense to have you do this. So, and just thank you so much for all of your training, all of your years of education, and your passion for helping people. I mean, it feels good that we're able to do what we do and provide a real tangible service to people, that if they just are consistent and do a little bit of light work, they'll see results. Mm-hmm. It's like, I have no doubt if you do the program, you'll see benefits from it. You know, there'll be long-term benefits, but I think people see short-term. I think within 30 days, you're going to start seeing some stuff change. Yeah.
Especially if you bring in that awareness throughout the day. And that can't keep harping back to that, but you know, you can do all the routines.
Yeah,
and all
while
that,
you're driving, practice the tongue posture trick, right? While you're at your desk, you know, sit up a little taller and try to put yourself in a better position for breathing. Am I breathing into my chest, or am I breathing into my lower abdominal area and then filling the chest up after? You know, just simplistic things that we can do. It always feels good to take a nice, long, deep breath and just clears your head. And there are obviously other simple techniques that we've talked about for years now here at Critical Bench, on our YouTube channel, on the podcast. You know, just getting up and being vertical, going for a walk outside, get some sunshine, drink a glass of water. All these things are right there for you to do, and they're simple and they work. It's just that what do we do? What do we gravitate to? We go and we get an energy drink, and we go back to our seated position, right? It's like, no, just get more vertical. Listen to Ben Greenfield or some of these other guys, right? They know when you're upright and you're moving, you're vertical, you're thinking better. You're clear-headed. You're cognitively better. And then it just transforms to mood and how your body feels and functions. All these things work together. So for those interested in learning more about the program, seeking it out, please go to www.breatheandsleep.org. So, dude, again, so much appreciation for you taking the time to come in and talk about this. It's just another awesome thing that you've done here at Critical Bench to help people. I mean, you have hundreds, if not 1,000 videos on our YouTube channel for, over the years. And you've done so many that talk about breathing and massage, self-massage, and all these great techniques that people can apply to improve their life in very simplistic ways. So this is great, man. We love having you here. We thank you so much for all you've done.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. I'm grateful that I can help people and enjoy doing it and be passionate about learning and, formulating what I'm learning, and at least I think in simpler terms so people can understand and implement it. Yeah,
I think I said that word simple quite a few times today, because that's what works for people. Yeah. They don't want complicated. They want, what's the 10-second solution besides popping a pill? Well, sometimes it is a 10-second thing that we have to help you to get you on your way, but oftentimes it might require 5 or 10 minutes of your time. But like anything else in life, you build momentum, and once you get that momentum and you've created a new habit, life starts to get better. Life improves. So, listeners, thank you so much for coming to the Strong by Design podcast. If today was your very first episode, you've just scratched the surface. There's hundreds of episodes to go back and listen to. We talk about all things here on Strong by Design, all things body, mind, and spirit. How are you able to live a life strong by design? And so there's pretty much no topic or subject matter that we're not willing to cover and discuss on the podcast. That's what makes it so much fun. We can kind of go down any road and bring in experts from all walks of life to help you live that life strong by design. So God bless you. We'll be back with another episode just around the corner. We hope you come and join us for that one. We'll see you again soon.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to the Strong by Design podcast. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe so that more people can find out about our show. Plus, you don't want to miss any future episodes with the amazing guests and topics we have lined up for you.